So, hello everyone. Thank you. Welcome to the second half of the workshop. The next upcoming hour, we're going to be speaking about managing change in media space, social media information disorder, and voting dynamics. My name is Vitota Mirkita. I'm a journalist at Delphi, and I'll be your moderator. And we have a lovely panel of specialists here who are eager to share their thoughts, their information, everything that they have. Some of them are online and some of them are, as you can see, present here. So I'll start by introducing the people who are online. And since this is an international event, obviously there's going to be this charming element of not knowing how to correctly pronounce someone's name. So I'm very, very sorry if I'm going to butcher your names. Since my name is Vitota, I'm very used to having this happen to me. So our first panelist is Dr. Tilak Jha. He is an associate professor at Bennett University, India. And please correct me if I pronounce your name in a wrong way.
No, it's perfectly fine.
That's a surprise for me. Thank you. So our next participant who is online is Mr. Gabriel Carson. He is Secretary at Support at African Parliamentary Network on Internet Governance. Do we have him online? No.
Yes.
Oh, okay. And did I butcher your name?
All right. So how much time do I have?
Oh, no. We're still introducing the people. Okay, if I understand, Mr. Gabriel is not online. So next to me, we have Dr. Victor Denisenko. He is Associate Professor at Vilnius University. On my right, we have Ms. Yeva Ivanovskaite. She is Innovation and Partnership Team Lead at Delphi. And over here, we have Aiste Midute. She is representing Lithuanian Counter Disinfo Project Digires. So the way it's going to work here, we're going to have each panelist present their talking points, and they're going to have around 6 minutes to do so. Afterwards, we're going to have a discussion and questions. We'll be awaiting questions from the audience and also from the people who are online. So I think we can start with Professor Tilak, who is online. So are you ready to present your talking points?
Yes.
Please go ahead.
So first of all, thank you so much. I think it's an immense privilege to be part of this fantastic discussion. I think let's start with the debate today about elections. And I think India just had world's biggest and possibly most comprehensive election exercise. Almost 1 billion people voted. So I think how we need to, before we get into the detail of it, let me just tell a few things, is that what we are essentially talking about is two things, two words which have become very, very interesting in current times: myth and truth. So what essentially these AI tools and misinformation campaigns, and for that matter, they don't have always negative impact. They also at times and often have very positive impact, including in the election process. But what we do see on a larger scale, that there is a whole sort of thing in which we find that truth has become a casualty. So that's the first thing. And I think we are living in an era of TikToks and Instagrams, fragmentation of politics, far right coming up in a very, very significant way, including in almost many other parts of the world, including in Europe as well. Quite a bit of irreverence, I would say. I think this has become a trend in younger generation, in the social media generation in particular. There is a tendency to become entertaining and rebellious. And that is a clear sign towards some sort of illiberal rule, if I may say it. Democracy is technically turning more direct in terms of people's ability to comment and share and respond to things being said. But at the same time, I think we often see bias is coming from both sides. And this is the real tragedy of the misinformation thing, which is happening, including at the time, something as crucial as elections as well. And I think elections, now we are talking about elections, just a few, a couple of days ago, we got to know that there have been at least 2 people who got elected to the recently to the European Union elections, in which there is a politician from Cyprus and another from another is a Spaniard. They both have hardly any political experience, not much of higher education. Their primary qualification lies in railing against the political elite of the country, taking position which mainstream politicians would find very, very difficult. And this is not just happening in one part of the world. This has happened in America. This has happened in many other countries. And I think, including in India as well, what we see is that it is not about left or right at times. It's just about politicians and stakeholders. When there is something as high at stake as elections and getting to power, they are willing to cut short. And that's where all the election-related misinformation comes in. I think when we talk about Indian election 2024, it went on for roughly 6 weeks, in which you had a huge, this was the first election for that matter in which AI was deployed at this scale, because there was not much of AI before this. So this was the first election in that sense. And what we initially saw was a bit of innocent videos in which some politicians would use the technology to create some videos to personalize their campaigns. But over the period, it looked to a situation where it was doing deep fakes, some of it really, really controversial and creating issues. There were some Bollywood stars who were caught up in creating and who were basically found to be doing deep fakes, which was not theirs. And I think thereafter the Election Commission also started taking note. But this was not just on that that side, just celebrities from the Bollywood or this world or that world. It was happening from the ruling and the opposition parties on the both sides, And I think I would like to just point out that there is this fact-checking website which have gone into the detail of it. They have found that
the non-election,
yeah.
And I think the one thing I wanted to add is, irrespectively of where we're looking, so in any of these countries, there's definitely one trend circulating across, which is that information inequality. So people's lack of access to information that they need, that is suited for their communities and their languages, does destabilize democracy and has got huge effects on what we perceive as the critical issues to look at. And I feel like there is a point there, hopefully we'll pick this up in the Q&A, about the role of journalism and newsrooms, especially of the people and communities we're trying to serve. So in terms of what else we do,
I think we're having some technical difficulties. Yeah, so excuse us. I'll check with the team if everything is okay.
All right.
It sounds like we're getting sound from another room. Is that possible?
Yeah, I think I have been hearing voices.
Yeah, that's usually not a good sign, but I can assure you we all heard them. So I'm very sorry for this in the situation.
Right, so I think I would just like to cut the story short. I believe in the 6 minutes that I've been allotted is that in general, what we see is that positive and negative things. So you have political parties, including the BJP, the ruling party of Prime Minister Modi, and the opposition, and of course the regional parties. They're all using misinformation, and AI to a great extent, at times to speak in regional languages. For example, BJP has been at the forefront of having the Prime Minister speaking many regional languages. This was not something very easily possible earlier, but with AI, this has become fairly easy. And there was one dance video in which the Prime Minister was dancing. I think the Prime Minister himself shared that video and commented on a light note that, well, I also found myself dancing for the first time ever. So those things have also happened, but there have also been some very some videos which have been very offensive. I think the legal actions have been taken on it. The government had to issue that, well, there could be legal action. I think some of them have also found it very easy to sort of just escape the legal thing, because they can't be caught. One person at least who shared a video of an opposition politician, Mamata Banerjee, in which she was again shown dancing. And I think one of the videos was really offensive, in which she was being shown using a sort of remote to burn down a hospital. Now that was offensive for sure. So in that case, the user who got in touch with the news agency said, I cannot be tracked, and I'm not going to take down this video. So these are also the things. So positive and negatives have both happened. But what we do see is that AI has done a lot of micro-targeting and personalization. And quite a bit of misinformation has been used from both sides, for the matter. I think in this misinformation thing, at least in this Indian election, what we found is that the opposition and the government were equal victims. At least one website called Logically Facts, they did roughly 224 fact checks. In the report, they said that almost 93 of them were against the alliance, against the ruling party, and roughly 46%, which was almost 103 of the 242, were against the opposition party. So roughly they were both targeted very significantly. That's what we see. And of course, there were quite a bit of AI deep fakes and other things. The Election Commission also found itself to be at the receiving end initially, though there was not much of AI content in this misinformation thing. It was hardly around 4 to 5 to 6%, not much. But it was also there was even if it was normal misinformation, people would claim that it is AI, but it was just normal editing. Those sort of things have also happened. At times, politicians have claimed that the video was fake, but in fact check organizations have found that the video was real. So those sort of misinformation has also happened. So quite a bit of trust has become a casualty, and I think that has been the biggest casualty, not just because of AI, but in general. I think news agencies, the declining amount of trust in news agencies have created a situation where there is a general distrust. There is a general lack of authority, and at least an authority in which people have faith. And now this failure, for that matter, of the liberal political setup has definitely sort of pushed the AI and misinformation thing in particular, and the use of AI for this really further. Election Commission, one senior Election Commission official went on to say that, well, we simply do not have the means to keep track of it. All we can do is complain to the social media platforms, and if they say that this is against their, this is in line with the community norms, or for that matter, if they take time, we have not much to do. By the way, AI has also helped in voter education. It has also helped in generating engagement. But if we see sort of do comparison in terms of whether the benefits have been more and whether its limitations have actually been more, it's the other way around. So these are some of the contours in which we can see the Indian elections: lack of trust, a lot of fake news and misinformation, and there is a whole tendency to skew public perception, influence voter behavior, and even manipulating election outcomes. Thankfully, it has not led to a situation where we can say with any certainty that it has actually led to manipulation, but the jury remains out in terms of saying that, well, AI and misinformation campaigns didn't really affect election. At least there have been some incidents which have been reported after the election. They do point to this being a factor, at least in some constituencies, at least in 5 to 10% of 5% constituencies for sure, especially in populous states and states where literacy is less. For example, Uttar Pradesh, the largest state of India, at least in some seats, there have been reports which do point out that misinformation did play significant role. So I think this is the contour in which we need to see Indian elections. And I think I look forward to questions from thereafter to take it further. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And I just want to remind you that everyone that this year is a very, very special year. So this year, around 4 billion people are going to the election polls. And India is one of the biggest democracies in the world, and it just had their election, but there's going to be election here in Lithuania and in the States. So around 4 billion people are going to be, or either were affected by disinformation that can be found during the elections. Thank you so much. And I believe I can see Gabriel Carson on the Zoom call. Are you ready to speak?
Yes, I'm available.
Okay, so please present your talking points.
Thank you very much. My name is Gabriel Carson. I am the Secretary of Support for the African Parliamentarian Network on Internet Governance. Briefly, what we do is we want to empower parliamentarians in Africa to understand internet governance as an ecosystem, as a means to influence policy and create further understanding. I would like to start with a simple reflection of what social media and social networking is, because for countries like Tanzania and developing countries like Africa, where we have been privileged to have benefit of leapfrogging in localizing social media, there's a difference on how we relate to the system. Social media in itself, social networking is about bringing communities of people. So if we talk about the internet characteristically being open, decentralized, and end-to-end, there is an abstraction in which social media is a use case drawn on how communities align. And for a country like Tanzania, where we have a socialist background, a combination of almost 120 tribes and another nation coming together to coalesce, we do have some parameters of integration, which can also be viewed in the higher abstraction of social media. When it comes to voting, historically, Tanzania, we have gone through democratic processes backed by the Greek mechanisms where voting hasn't changed much in terms of its forms, whether online or whether it goes in a simple ballot box. The conceptuality of voting has always been the same. And when we have mixed with the concepts of social media, I think it has still been highly principled in how our community is built, hence deep representation at the decentralized and local level. But beginning in the 2015 election, where we did have a higher penetration of using digital tools and people understanding social media, we saw that the political party engagement in using social media as a means to share their objective campaigning truth. And not much oppression happened in terms of having the opposition there. It was an equal space, believing that we were people still gaining the digital skills and the...
I think we're having, again, technical difficulties.
Understanding of what social media is. Hello?
I'm sorry, you kind of paused for a second. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. I do hope I'm available.
So you can continue.
Yes, thank you very much. So as I was saying, in terms of our understanding of the technical space, social media to us has just been used as a tool for representation, because representation of our community has already lined in the context of our communities. But ever since the 2015 digital transformation, where the government aided a lot of incentivization for young people to come to improve access and to actually improve what it meant to be on social media as a tool to embrace democratic values, then we saw the impacts that came without balanced coalitions among understanding for people. Hence, this was a source of misinformation and disinformation. Most of our disinformation and misinformation has not been quite politically turned out or politically themed. No, it has been an era of the digital skill sets of the people not actually understanding the power of social media. It has been just a representation of the rhetoric that happens on ground. Hence, it's been sort of a natural coalition of seeing social media for what it could be in the social wise. But in terms of the voting procedure, it hasn't quite been a tool of oppression rather than a tool of deeper engagement, especially in the 2020 election, where we could see with the improved digital transformation, with the improved accessibility and affordability context, so many people now could express themselves in terms of representation, but could also use the engaging social media tool as a form of sharing constant feedback. And this is what representational democracy has been. So for our community, that angle of what voting is and representation has aligned well with the social media as a tool. But when we see what is happening now, and as we go to elections in the next year, I am seeing a different rise in terms of the political use of social media to influence people, especially our countries where most of the infrastructure is highly controlled by the state. And this is by design because we want to push for further inclusion in the social structure. But still, who regulates the regulator becomes a question for all of us to understand. But as young people, they are engaging. As young people, we are speaking. But the problem comes that there's a bridge in terms of the population dynamics. And most of the elder generation understand social media rather as a single monotonous channel, whether us young people see it as a whole cultural shift. And that's the balancing that we need to do, because in the end, we are still a representational democracy at a very ground level, which is the different decentralization nature of the internet that we see expressed highly by social media. And with these principles and parameters falling in line, I think it still falls to one thing: informed policy in terms of a very dynamic and engaging population citizenry that actually understands digital skills as tools to help them represent themselves. But as I said, voting in the end has never changed in what its form or its nature has been. We still have that secrecy, we still have that dignity to one's holding one's vote in the ballot box. The confidence is online, but the confidence of digital systems and interoperable and open systems, that is where the question rises because of the regulatory nature. But in terms of the ground, the formality of what people understand, I think that is the dynamic which has been balanced, and we as Tanzania has been quite exemplary in that matter. I would also like to add that the conflict of interest now we have is that most social media has been created and carries the bias of the creator. It is highly Western or Eastern centric, hence the need for localization and homegrown solutions. And we cannot be blind to the dynamics that are changing now. There is a big geopolitical and geotechnology issue that's happening with China as well as with America. And for us as Africans, we are caught highly in the middle. And unless we do a lot of understanding and owning ourselves in terms of the infrastructure that we need, the ownership that we need, then even the use case of voting on social media might still have influence and but not come to the basic principles. Hence, localization of homegrown infrastructure and understanding our context as social media users and a culture of people is something that has created a great dynamic shift on how we have aligned in balancing the dynamics of voting online and using the online channel as a representation of participatory democracy. I think those are my short keywords for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'll turn to the panelists who are here live with us. Dr. Denisenko, could you please share your thoughts with us?
Okay. Of course, we could see that every region have own challenges when we're talking about disinformation, some kind of propaganda, new technologies, including AI. And I will try talk more from perspective of our region. And in our region, I could say that main challenge is geopolitical situation. We are living next to Russia, a state which few years ago began open aggression against another country. We are living next to Belarus, close ally of Russia, and in Lithuania and literacy. In general, in this region, in Baltic states, in Poland, it's not first year when we are talking about information warfare and challenge of information warfare. I, as a young journalist, cover this topic first time 18 years ago, and I was not first who talk or write about it. So for us, it's not new challenge, but it's part of our reality, and this reality also is changing, because if before Crimea or even before year 2022, we more talk about this propaganda warfare, war of narratives, information warfare in terms of psychological warfare. Today we are also talking about some kind of hybrid influence, when together with information warfare we have elements of some physical or kinetic activities, including in our region and including in Baltic states and Poland. So it's big challenge for our security. And in this context, question about media literacy. And I'm understanding media literacy in a broad term. It means we are talking not only about possibility to recognize some fakes or disinformation and propaganda, but in general to use information to figure out which sources of information are trustful, which are not, how these activities of information warfare could affect society, and so on and so on. In this situation, I could say that media literacy is a crucial thing. And in Lithuania, we have kind of paradoxical situation, because I could say that in Lithuania we are lucky, because authorities recognize that challenge of information warfare exists, and that we are in fact in this tough situation. Also, we have political will to do something about it. Non-governmental organizations, a lot of non-governmental organizations works in this field. Media supports media literacy, and in our media we have few initiatives of fact-checking, so it's a very good thing. And main point which we are discussing in Lithuania, I think last 10 years or even more, but we need put media literacy in the schools. And of course, here we have discussion how it should look like. Should it be a separate course for pupils in schools, or it could be integrated in some existing lessons or courses? And paradox is that in general, in Lithuania, we have this political consensus. If you will ask any politician, I think, what do we need some media literacy like a course in the schools? He or she will say, yes, of course, it's quite obvious. But still, I could not see implementation of this political will, because every time when we're trying to talk about practical implementation, it's more problems. It's first of all, we need teachers. It should be part of kind of education reform. In general, also in Lithuania, in general, is lack of teachers. And if we will start prepare teachers today for this course, it means that first teachers we will have after 4 years. bachelor level of university degree, and it will be not enough still. So my point is that even in countries where understanding about challenges and importance of media literacy is quite where this understanding exists, still it's problems with implementation. So I think I will stop here.
Thank you so much. And so we touched on elections, we touched on media literacy and what can be done and what's actually not being done. And now it's time to turn to these two lovely ladies who will actually share some practical information on what they gather, know, and how it actually looks to fight disinformation. So Ms. Ieva Nemoskaite, if you could go first.
Yeah, just let me share my screen. Apparently, it seems that I have some sort of system restrictions. So I know that the organizers have my presentation. If you would be so kind to show it on the screen, that would be really helpful. But yeah, while they're doing that, I wanted to say that what I am about to say is going to be a smooth transition from the first part of the workshop 2A, of what Victor has just said, because I'm going to be talking about solutions. And specifically, I'm going to be talking about the solutions of the organization that I represent, and it is Delfi. It is the largest online news organization in the Baltic states and the most read online news media source in Lithuania. And we have been working quite hard in terms of anti-disinformation measures ever since 2018, when the first project actually 2017, when the first project related to countering disinformation measures was born. What we are doing right now is probably, if we're not seeing the slides, I'm going to try to visualize them for you. So on my first slide, you would see our specific initiatives against disinformation. So we have three main areas. We have fact-checking tools, we have educational content, and we have collaborations. When it comes to fact-checking tools, we have a fact-checking department, the lead of which is sitting right next to me, and it's called Malodetectors, or lie detector in English. We belong to many collaborative networks that unify fact-checking organizations globally and on a European level. And thus we're able to make an impact not only in Lithuania, but also beyond. When it comes to the educational content, we have specific content and specific tools that we're targeting, by which we're targeting youth audiences. So, for example, when it comes to Malodetectors, we have a campaign of media literacy videos on TikTok and Instagram, where we very briefly, but also in a very simplistic manner, explain what specific disinformation trends on topics that are of everyday relevance to the users mean. So, for example, there was one video where we explained what a little sticker of a frog on a banana means. You would be surprised that it was a very trending disinformation narrative of such a simplistic thing, but we think that it's relevant We did that video and it acquired more than 100,000 views on TikTok.
Which is a lot for Lithuania.
A lot. We only have 2.7 million of people living in Lithuania. So I think that's a huge achievement. When it comes to collaborations, we are part of a few networks, one of which ICE is going to be presenting as well, as far as I know, where we are part of collaborative work with academia, NGOs, media organizations, which I represent, where we brainstorm together to find solutions on how, in specific market, in our market. So in our case, there are two organizations that we belong to. One is Lithuanian organization called EuroDIG, and another one is a part of the EDMO hubs that was presented in workshop 2A. And it's the Baltic hub called BESIT. So we sit together, we find solutions on how to counter disinformation together. Last that I was about to present on that first slide, but I'll probably fast forward to and conclude after this because I feel like I'm talking too much. So the last thing when it comes to solutions are also technological innovations. So we have rolled out a fact-checking bot on Messenger platform under the account of Malodetectors, but we will also be launching another one in collaboration with other fact checkers in Europe to ensure AI learning from different languages when it comes to disinformation in real time. So basically, what I wanted to say is that when it comes to the best practices that we can deploy, it is a two-way street. So stakeholders, meaning government institutions, media organizations, NGOs, have to take measures themselves, which include fact-checking, collaborative networks to find solutions together, because we're doing that and we know that it works. And creating engaging content that would be relevant to their audience, regardless of whether the audience is of media organization. So it's relatively clear what we have to do. We have to make the content easy to consume, readable. But for example, if we're talking about government institutions, they have to think of what their target audience is as well and how to best approach them. And on the other side of that same street are users and readers. So what they can do, they can improve their critical thinking. They have to use the verified sources, which is a huge problem. And as Victor mentioned, there has to be political will, and there has to be strong measures to change the status quo, which is not so good right now, unfortunately. And yes, they have to be willing to participate in those educational programs. So if there is no interest from those parties on both sides of the street, we will probably not see the impact. But at least I can say from a media's perspective that we're trying and we're doing everything we can. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'll just add, I think what Yeva said is very important. I come from Delphi as well. And sometimes as a media organization, we invite school children to see our office and to understand how journalists work. And quite recently, I had a group of 16-year-olds who visited us. And I asked them, how do you get your news? What do you guys read? And their reaction was, oh, but we don't read news media like portals, newspapers, and so on. Okay, so how do you get your information? And their reaction was TikTok. And then my reaction was, but you realize that there's a lot of disinformation on there? And they were like, yeah. And then I asked them to give me examples of disinformation that they saw on TikTok. They gave a lot of examples. And so it's very important that people want to understand and find disinformation, that people want to actually increase their media literacy skills. Because, for example, those 16-year-olds were okay with receiving disinformation. So I just wanted to add this because it's a very interesting point. And our last panelist here is Ms. Aiste Midute.
Hello, everybody. Once again, it seems that today I'm wearing many different hats. So some of you already heard me during the first part of this workshop, where I was talking as part of Delphi's fact-checking initiative as an editor and lead fact-checker. And now I'm gonna briefly talk about another thing that we did together with the Vytautas Magnus University and different NGOs. It's a project called DIGRES. This project was started with a very ambitious goal to strengthen digital resilience of society, to talk about disinformation, to empower people to fact check some certain things themselves. And it was it still is a common initiative between academia, universities, media organizations, and independent journalists. And what was our approach to fight disinformation, to talk about it? First of all, we were thinking about how to build trust in traditional media, because of course it's a huge problem that people do not trust media organizations anymore. They tend to look for information on social networks. Just last week, I was fact-checking one claim when one woman declared that young Lithuanian schoolboys, right after the school, they're going to be sent to Ukraine to fight in the war. And when one person asked, where's this information coming from? She said, I saw it on Telegram. So Telegram is now the leader who passes information to people and not the official media. What we tried to do to change this, at least a little bit in Lithuania, we were talking a lot with regional media, with different media organizations, with NGOs, different stakeholders, about how media works, about what is fact-checking, how fact-checking works, why is it important. Of course, when you see this picture, how everything is in huge cities, it's very different from what you see in smaller regions, and media-wise as well. People living in smaller territories, they do not tend to think about this global perspective, about why do we need so much to talk about this misinformation problem. And by connecting with regional journalists, people from region, we get their perspective, we get their problems, the problems that they're facing. The other thing that we did was equipping community leaders with knowledge how to fact check content themselves, how to look for sources. We equipped them with knowledge how to consume content in a different manner. And one of the main techniques that we were talking about was lateral reading, where you, instead of scrolling down the page, you tend to come out of the article that you're reading and search for different clues, like what people they mention, what events they mention, and to fact check information that way, looking for more contextual information on the content that you're reading. And I think one of the most important efforts that we done was meeting with community leaders who passes their knowledge to others. For instance, we tend to think that journalists passing the knowledge, but it's also doctors who are passing the knowledge to different people. And people are entrusting themselves with their most valuable asset, their health. They're looking for advice on health questions. There's also librarians who passes their knowledge to people who not only are looking for information, they are talking about the realities that they have to face. We're talking about teachers who passes their knowledge to children. And all these people, all these different people need to be equipped with this knowledge, how to fact check information. Well, some of us could say, like, I don't know, I'm a doctor, I'm a driver. I don't need those tools, those fact-checking tools in my life. I have other problems, but we need to understand that this huge problem of disinformation, it's not gonna solve itself, and it's not only fact-checkers and journalists who have to explain what the reality is. We all need to have the sense of what the reality is. And the only way of achieving it is to having better knowledge of the most common tools, for instance, how to do a basic fact-checking. And my general notion is that being a fact-checker, at least a mediocre fact-checker, if not a good fact-checker, is easy, and it's pretty reachable for many members of our society. And it's going to be our reality with so much in terms of such a huge information flow. The other approach that we took was creating a pilot learning teaching model for students in third university year, communication students. And I was leading the workshops of how to recognize the main disinformation narratives and how to use those simple digital tools to fact-check information themselves. And of course, those young people had many questions regarding how to, for instance, talk with their parents or their grandparents that deeply believe in conspiracy theories or are deeply affected by low quality content and disinformation. Of course, each huge goal comes with a challenge to achieve that, and we had to deal with it as well. And one of the biggest obstacles is that, of course, fact-checking works, and it's proven by university studies, but not enough people see it. Why not enough people see it? Because we constantly have to compete with, I don't know, cute kitties playing otters all over the internet, and it's hard. It's a really hard task to talk about serious things and to attract people's attention. So that's why fact-checkers, of course, need help from the biggest social media platforms. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to pass our message, what we want to share. And of course, when you work in this huge multiple organization project, you have this feeling that different stakeholders have pretty different goals, and it's not always matching. Or even if they match, there's another problem. We risk of duplicating our efforts. And that's what we see with the huge rise of fact-checking organizations, for instance, and a huge rise of organizations consisting of different fact-checking organizations, is that most of the time we tackle the same disinformation narratives without looking for a direction, a common direction that we could go to, and reaching something bigger, reaching progress. And the other thing that I noticed, especially is kind of self-critique, but between us, a lot of fact-checking organizations are driven by this approach to fact-check singular claims. And this is how most of the partnership works with the bigger platforms, that we fact-check separate claims instead of looking at wider context, instead of talking about influence operations and the actions that the bad actors take. And it's very important to see the wider picture, of course. One fact check is not going to solve this huge problem. But I don't want to leave you with such a gloomy message. I deeply believe, as I said before, each of us can be a fact checker. We just need this curiosity to do things, to explore media world, which is very, very powerful. So thank you for listening to me.
Thank you so much. And I can say, I don't know about you guys, but I'm constantly working as a fact checker for my mother, for my father, for everyone in my family. And I guess everyone can relate to this. So we still have some time for questions. And I hope that either here in this lovely audience or from the lovely people online, maybe someone would like to ask a question. And I see an eager audience member. Please go ahead.
I've been hearing a lot about media literacy programs, and everybody knows that in media literacy, education, and activities are important, but my question is, how do we do it at scale? Because most of us, we're small, not well-funded civil society organizations, and if we bring a group and another group, okay, so we maybe help 100 people, 1,000 people, but how do you do this? If you have any ideas about that, how do you do it at scale? Reach a large audience, systematic change.
I guess maybe Yava, you could help find the answer here.
Yeah. So coming back to the point that I emphasized during my presentation, first of all, you have to have the demand for a change in a country. If there is a demand, there has to be one initiator, and one organization is enough, I think. As long as that organization is motivated enough to bring all of the stakeholders in one room to discuss the possible next steps, even not the final result, but to outline the strategy that can be later be divided into smaller steps that would allow for a big change. And this is what we are trying to do. We are still doing the baby steps. But when it comes to the networks I mentioned, this is what we did. We had this idea that we wanted to collaborate with academia in the very first place. And then little by little, we realized that we also want to collaborate with government institutions, with the ministries that should be interested in that, with media literacy practitioner NGOs that have hands-on experience in informal education. And we brought them all together, and there is a demand for it. And we're little by little discussing on how this can move forward. So there has to be, coming back to the
coalitions, right?
Yeah. Different people, different people and organizations interested in changing the status quo. With different capacity skills that can complement one another.
We have a lovely observation from Professor Tilak, who is online, and he's talking about that we should look at the algorithms of media companies and how they are using, or rather misusing, the nature of human mind, trying to get more likes, trying to get more attention, so on. And I will turn it into a question, and it's going to be directed to Aiste. Is it possible to fight disinformation on social media when social media companies are gaining so much by, making people angry, making people engaged? So is there a way for us to work together actually with them trying to achieve this one goal of eradicating or just minimizing the amount of disinformation?
I believe unless we include all the platforms and we sit at this round table with them and we have the same goal, then yes, it's possible, but we didn't manage to achieve that yet. And while some platforms, for instance, Meta, is at least doing something. I mean, we know that majorly this disinformation problem was created by social media. So they're tidying after themselves, in a sense. At least they're trying to do something now, but it's not enough involvement. And we talk about this problematic platforms, like, for instance, YouTube, who was sent a letter from world's fact checkers, but at first didn't really react to it, then tried to say that, oh, we're doing something in-house. But it's not enough to do something in-house. I don't see it, probably you don't see it as well, how they try to reduce this information on the platform. And we need to have this huge collaboration between fact checkers and platforms and look for those mutual solutions, how to tackle this problem, because as an experts in this field, we know what to do probably, and it shouldn't be the initiative coming only from the platforms that say we can govern them ourselves to do that. We don't trust them anymore, I guess.
So what I noticed when it comes to YouTube, when you go on certain video, you can see at the bottom, they says, oh, this video has information about COVID, and that's it, you know, and I haven't noticed any additional work from them. We still have time for probably one question. Is there anyone who would like to ask something? Anyone from who's online? Okay, I see. Yeah, go ahead.
Not a question, or rather an observation, I would say, is that I think the previous panelists deliberated on the aspect of algorithm and human mind, but I think we tend to ignore how much logic can achieve. Logic is a double whammy. It can make both sides appear equally logical, which may not be the case. I think this is the challenge that we are facing in elections, in misinformation and information related to health and everything. You just see during COVID, the time when people were dying just in queue for oxygen, and hundreds and thousands of us all across the world. And there were people who were busy minting money because somehow they were misusing the information, you know. So logic and this argument that, well, you know, that we can live with a very, very logical world, when the entire limits of logic ends up with consumer and markets. I think that's where this is the fundamental question that we need to address. AI is not a problem, but AI is not very natural. I mean, we tend to also ignore the fact that human intelligence and AI, what AI does is essentially clubbing up a lot of information and recycling that information, and we tend to call it intelligent. That's not intelligence. Intelligence is using less information to be able to tell more deduction. If I know everything that Facebook and Google and Twitter and all these social media platforms know about you, I'll be able to tell much more about any person. But with all this information, they're just able to provide some basic information. These needs to be understood. These needs to be understood and taken in context. I think we have tried to make the world far more logical, including with the application of AI and all these things. That's somehow backfiring. We need to focus also on how to understand this information. Information is an empowerment. We are providing empowerment, but we are not providing people the sense to use that empowerment. That is far more critical question.
Thank you so much. And I think it's a very interesting point saying that, you know, some people were gaining, some people were trying to find information, and some people were spreading this information and gaining money from that. So it's we turn into trying to find out, realize what being human is. Do we want to get more money and spread this information for our gains, or are we actually trying to fight it? And I would like to turn to Francesco to wrap the session up.
Okay, yes, thank you very much. I'm Francesco Vecchi from EuroDIG. I'm here as a rapporteur. So my aim is to try to wrap up what has been said during the session, find if there is broader consensus in the room in order to draft, the message that you can actually even later edit, modify, add comments on if you believe that I missed something. It's a process that's going to take place in the next few days, so please do when it's going to be shared on the platform. Okay, I'll start from the context. Okay, we said that this year was really particular because 4 billion people were going to elections, and this showed, on the one hand, much potential for disinformation to produce some problems in these democratic institutions, but also general distrust in democratic institutions as they are. We see trend towards entertainment, gamification, and polarization in democratic societies. AI used to foster disinformation practices and propaganda, not just with generative AI, but also with algorithm and machine learning, and also with tools like translation tools or micro-targeting campaigns, micro-targeting practices. And especially social media, of course, played a major role, especially in global south countries where they are actually a tool for constant feedback from the government. What are the solutions to this? Please keep in mind that there has already been a session, so I would skip on things that we already discussed earlier. So, for example, multi-stakeholderism and other approaches that already have been presented, especially Delphi. Actually, what we wanted to, some solutions that are proposed are especially to widen broad media literacy. That means not just education on how to use media, but especially to feed a critical spirit, education, fact-checking, and added to the educational curriculum in schools with a specific attention to implementation. Try to create a virtuous cycle between stakeholders and users. So on the one hand, stakeholders must take actions to change how they provide services, but on the other hand, the users need to produce critical thinking on their own and use verified sources. Fourth, diversify solutions depending on the region. We saw that actually misinformation for Central Eastern Europe can be a problem or must be framed in geopolitical terms. For Africa, has to do with the centralization of power. For India, is more related to micro-profiling and other practices. So we need to diversify solutions. We cannot think of just one solution for every kind of issue. And finally, empower community leaders with knowledge and tools to detect mis and disinformation and understand information disorders, because they are actually important actors on the local level. Finally, the general approach should avoid West-centric or East-centric trends in order to avoid either European, American attitudes and Chinese attitudes, and be really inclusive and global. And it must be focused specifically on social media, because especially for the growing youth in the global south, they are most of the internet they consume. Is there any specific objection, anything you want to add, any modification, or do you agree with the main message?
Well, I think you did a wonderful job.
Okay, thank you.